I'm going to give you a list of 12 principles connected with the process of forgiveness kind of quickly in 10 minutes, and then we'll do our practice, okay? Here are the principles. First, understanding what it is and what it's not. And that was a little bit of what I elucidated earlier, that it's not condoning, and it's not a papering over, and it's not for the other person, and so forth. So there's an education. Then the second is to sense the suffering in yourself of still holding on to this lack of forgiveness for yourself or another. And start to feel that it's not compassionate, that you have this great suffering. It's not in your best interest to keep running the thoughts and feeling the feelings and doing the scenario. So you actually sense the weight of not forgiving. Third, you reflect on the benefits of a loving heart. And there are literal trainings and reflections. Your dreams become sweeter, you waken more easily, men and women will love you, angels and devas will love you. If you lose things, they'll be returned, it says. I don't know, as you go and love. People will welcome you everywhere when you're forgiving and loving. Your thoughts become pleasant. Animals will sense this and love you. And elephants will bow as you go by, it says. I don't know, you can try it in the zoo, right? Your babies are happy in the womb and as you grow up. And you recite these things and you look at what are the benefits of a loving heart. That's 3. Number 4, you discover in the sense of identity that it is not necessary to be loyal to your suffering. This is a big one, ladies and gentlemen, that we're so loyal to our suffering. What happened to me? The trauma, the betrayal. I mean, okay, it happened. It was horrible, and you may need to do healing. But is that what defines you? Live in joy, says the Buddha. This is his instruction. Live in joy and love even among those who hate. Live in joy and health even among the afflicted. Live in joy and peace even among the troubled. These are instructions, and then he tells you how to do it. So you release, you look at the Dalai Lama, who has the weight of the oppression in Tibet and the loss of the culture, and yet he's also a very happy, joyful person. He said they've taken so much. They've destroyed temples, burned our texts, disrobed our monks and nuns, limited our culture and destroyed it in so many ways. Why should I also let them take my joy and peace of mind? Albert Camus put it, he spoke of joy as being a moral obligation. He said, there's so much suffering in the world, yes, but if that's all that there was to humanity, it would be hopeless. Joy, too, is a moral obligation of humanity. So we understand that being loyal to your suffering is not who you are and not helpful. That's 4. 5, understanding that it's a process that you go through and you do forgiveness over and over and over again, and finally you get to some place where forgiveness is possible. A man wrote to the IRS, I haven't been able to sleep knowing that I cheated on my taxes. Since I failed to fully disclose my earnings last year on my return, I've enclosed a bank check for $2,000. If I still can't sleep, I'll send the rest. That's how it works, step by step, right? It's a training, it's a process, layer by layer. That's how the psyche and the body work. 6, you have to set your intention. And there's a whole complex and profound teaching in Buddhist psychology about the power of both short-term and long-term intention. But when you set your intention, it sets the compass of your heart and your psyche in a direction, and then you meet all the obstacles, and you can, by having that intention, you can work, those obstacles become workable because you know where you're going. Whether it's in a business or a relationship or a love affair or a creative activity or in the work of the heart, to set the intention is really important and powerful. 7, you then need to learn the inner and outer forms of forgiveness. And we'll do an inner practice shortly of these 3 directions of forgiveness. And the Buddhist world is full of outer forms of the practice of pavarana and certain kinds of confession and making amends and so forth. All these that are part of it, that not only do you need to know that it is a practice, but you actually learn the practices and forms. And there's ritual outer forms and then inner practices. 8. Inner technology requires that you start the easiest way for these kind of practices, not for mindfulness training where you start where you are, but with love and compassion and forgiveness. The inner technology is you start with whatever opens your heart. And maybe it's your dog, and maybe it's the Dalai Lama, and maybe it's, your child, or the thing the person that you most love and most easily can forgive. And when that's open, then you bring in neutral, somebody that's a little more difficult. And only when the heart's way open do you then say, all right, let me take something difficult. And what happens is you take the thing that's difficult and your heart closes and shrivels and says, I hate them, I'm never going to forgive them. And then you sit there with the suffering of that. There you are with your heart open and gushy and loving your dog and your child and your partner and all those things. And then your heart turns into this walnut. It's really hard. And you go, well, I'm never going to love that person, but this is too painful. Okay, I'll forgive you just a little bit, because the technology itself, step by step, begins to teach you what it means to live with an open heart. So you start with what's easy. That's 8. 9, you must be willing to grieve. And grief has, as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross spelled out, bargaining. I wish it didn't happen. Is there some other way? Why didn't I? Loss, fear, anger. And the poet Rumi says, don't reject your grief and loneliness. Let it season you like few ingredients can. So there comes a kind of trust, and I see it when I work with people over weeks and months and years, that things that are difficult become digested and workable and transformed in us. So you have to be willing to go through the process in some honorable way, as I'm sure Nelson Mandela did. He describes it. He was outraged and angry and hurt and grieving and all the things that anyone would feel. 9, be willing to grieve and let go. 10, forgiveness includes all the dimensions of our life, the foundations of mindfulness. Some of the trauma is held in the body, and there's all kinds of trauma practice that you can do to release what's carried in the body. Eduardo Galeano says, science says the body is a machine. The church says the body is sin. The marketplace says the body is good business. The body says, I am a fiesta. And we get locked, whether it's the church or science or things like that. We get all this stuff actually locked in our body, and there's a very good science about about working with trauma. That's a part of forgiveness for some of us. And if you want to read Peter Levine's Waking the Tiger, the somatic experience is a very intelligent approach to bodily held trauma, fight, flight, and freeze, and how it gets released. Forgiveness is work of the body. It's work of the emotions, where you work with the unfinished business, and you start to feel that the capacity for your tears and your joy grows as you listen deeply. And that you allow yourself to have all these feelings, and in doing so, the space of awareness that can hold them all becomes more and more trustworthy. And it works in the mind, the third foundation of mindfulness, because you see all the stories, and you're loyal to your stories, but the fact is that most of your stories are reruns. It's like you're stuck in a hotel room at 2 a.m, and you can't change the channel, and you're on one of those kind of shopping rerun channels, and it's just blaring, only it's your own mind, right? And 98% of the thoughts you have today are the same thoughts you had yesterday. There are very few new ones, actually, if you look closely. So in the mind, there are trainings in Buddhism for both the abandonment and the replacement of thoughts, skillful replacement of thoughts. As Abraham Lincoln said, I have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. Think of this. And so you start to see the thought structure and discover you can change it. And then the fourth is the relational aspect, that we need help from one another. And it's a collective process as well. Annie Lamott, my friend, writes, she says, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there alone, you know. And in some way to come and practice together is to realize that you're not the only one raising your hand saying you need to forgive yourself. Turns out that almost everybody else in the room raises their hand too. And that we, Nelson Mandela and Aung San Suu Kyi, and the people sitting near you are all part of the, if we speak of interpersonal neurobiology, of the field of forgiveness. The last two, I'm going on, is the shift of identity. And this is a poem I will read from Juan Ramon Jimenez. He writes, Yo no soy yo, I am not I. I am this one walking beside me whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit and at other times I forget. The one who remains silent when I talk, the one who forgives sweet when I hate, the one who takes a walk when I am indoors, and the one who will remain standing when I die. There is in us an undying capacity for love and freedom that is untouched by what happens to you. And to come back to this, to know this true nature, original mind, Buddha nature, the shift of identity, O nobly born, is what is the invitation of the work of forgiveness. And Buddhist teachings are full of these people, mass murderers like Milarepa and Angulimala, who go through a transformation and are forgiven. So if they can be forgiven, even you, my dear friends, might be a possibility. And then the last is perspective. And in the Buddhist tradition, they talk about 100,000 mahakalpas of practice of forgiveness. A mountain as high as Mount Everest, and every 100 years, a bird comes along with a silk scarf in its beak and drags it across the top of the mountain, wearing it away a tiny bit. When that mountain is worn down, that's one mahakalpa. 100,000 of those of practicing forgiveness, you'll get it down. Or as the Ojibwe say, sometimes I go about pitying myself when all the while I'm being carried by great winds across the sky. And we're in this drama of incarnation and life that is so much bigger than our little stories. And when we can open this perspective, all kinds of ways to do it in this vast way, it's not just you who are hurt, but it's the hurt of humanity. It's not just you who are betrayed. It's the hurt of love, of relationship. Everybody who loves is hurt in some way. Everybody who enters the marketplace gets betrayed. You know, it's the loss is not just your pain, it's the pain of being alive. And then you feel connected with everyone in this vastness.